member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the 18th century English politician Edmund Burke once quoted, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." And what is happening in Iraq at the moment is evil, without doubt. I go back to my time as a police officer with Victoria Police with 18 years service, where I attended a number of homicides and very violent crimes, armed robberies, serious assaults with weapons, and can I say I've never attended an incident where someone was beheaded or their body parts had been cut off. What we are seeing in Iraq and Syria is simply barbaric. We've all read and witnessed on TV what extremists in the Islamic State terrorists, and I call them terrorists as that's what they are doing to our fellow humans being in Syria and Iraq is truly disturbing. News of public executions and beheading of innocent people are now etched in many people's minds. And I feel so awfully sorry for the family members of those who have been executed and actually, in many cases, been forced to watch these atrocities take place. Horrors such as Australia's citizens, including children, sadly being encouraged by, in most cases, male parents, gleefully holding severed heads, is a stark reminder that Australia is not insulated by what is happening on the other side of the world. Thousands of women have been forced into sexual slavery. More than 1 million Iraqis have been driven from their homes. At least 60 Australians are fighting with the terrorist groups, such as the Islamic State terrorists, across Iraq and Syria, and they are supported by over 100 more. Many of these Australian terrorists will try to return to Australia and will be undoubtedly comfortable with the killing of human beings, as this is why they've gone there in the first place. This must be and will be addressed with current terrorism legislation, which soon will enter this House. I'm extremely pleased that this Parliament is showing a bipartisan support to protect innocent people at risk of being exterminated by the Islamic State terrorists in northern Iraq. Both the Prime Minister and Leader of Opposition, in their statements to the place, used the word genocide of persecuted minority groups of Iraq. Genocide is a very strong word, but in this case I agree with their sentiment. There is no other word to describe the barbaric action of these Islamic State terrorists. Former Australian Labor Foreign Minister Gareth Evans, and I read yesterday, has said that United States President Barack Obama deserves unconditional support for his decision to use military force to protect the persecuted minority from threatened genocide by the marauding Islamic State terrorist militants in northern Iraq. He further went on to say the United States' action is completely consistent with the principles of international responsibility to protect people at risk of mass atrocity crimes that was embraced unanimously by the United Nations General Assembly in 2005. And can I also say that overnight the United Nations has come out in support of the current action being taken and also supported by the Iraqi government. The United States, and I continue my quote, the United States' motive in mobilising air power to protect the genocide of certain minority groups of Iraqis by the Islamic State is unquestionably humanitarian, he went on to say. Many thousands of men, women and children who have sought refuge in northern Iraq currently face death not only from starvation and exposure, but also from the genocidal slaughter by the rapidly advancing Islamic State terrorists. To date, Australia, in conjunction with America, British and French aircraft have participated in humanitarian airdrops to the people trapped in northern Iraq. Shortly, at the request of the Obama administration, and with the support of the Iraqi government, Australian, American, British, French, Canadian and Italian aircraft will airlift supplies including military equipment to the Kurdish regional government in Erbil, northern Iraq. Can I say we must support them because they cannot defend themselves with what is happening over there. Australia has met all the requests for humanitarian relief and for logistic support. This is the right thing for us to do as a country, and I congratulate again the Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, and also our Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, who's doing a fantastic job. This military action Australia is involved in Iraq is nothing like the war in 2003. Australia is there alongside our partners to protect fellow human beings who are being subject to the most hideous and despicable onslaught of barbaric Islamic State terrorists. Australians are good people. Australia is a lucky country. We should not sit on our hands while this type of evil against humanity takes place anywhere in the world. I congratulate the Prime Minister on his leadership on the role and also thank the Opposition Leader for his unequivocal support. For the House, my background, I actually served with the Victorian Police Counter-Terrorism Unit, and just back at home I'm still concerned about a number of our Commonwealth counter-terrorism laws, and I've raised this directly with the Prime Minister and also the Attorney-General. I'm still greatly concerned about preventative detention laws. I know, for example, Victoria Police will not use those laws. There's an argument on one side saying, well, the laws have never been used, so they're good laws. On the other hand, I know as a police officer, those laws are very impractical to use. I cannot understand why you would have a person in custody suspected or actually may be involved in the imminent terrorist attack, and yet you cannot ask them one question in custody. And then they need to be released and arrested under Part 1C of the Crimes Act once there's sufficient evidence that they are a suspect. You'll find that, as an example, Victorian Police will revert back to their state laws of using reasonable time, and what greatly concerns me, if there's an incident occurring in multi-states, Victoria, New South Wales, for example, you may get some states using Commonwealth investigation or interview powers and, for example, Victoria using reasonable ground. The other law which concerns me too is the mandatory reporting. Again, in Victoria, there's only one substance which requires the reporting of the theft or loss of ammonium nitrate fertiliser, which has always been the IRA's weapon of choice, but there are a number of high-consequence dangerous goods which need to be added, and I've again highlighted this to the Prime Minister and the Attorney-General. And the other great concern I have is police do not have immediate access to who is buying explosives or high-consequence dangerous goods, like I said, ammonium nitrate fertiliser. People may have a licence, but if a police officer involved in the counter-terrorism investigation checks a person, they wouldn't know whether that person's buying explosives or is undertaking training to be a pilot. And as we saw at September 11, we need to make sure the police members investigating terrorism in our country have every tool at their hand to make sure they can prevent a terrorist attack. And this was actually a matter I raised even in my maiden speech back in Parliament in 2004. It still greatly concerns me today. We were able to push it through a bipartisan report in Parliament, and I thank in particular the member for Wirra who strongly supported this. And again, I'll be pushing this because to me, we need to give our investigators everything they need at their everything they possibly need to identify any person or associate who may be involved in terrorist activity. But just in closing again, my thoughts and prayers are with all the family members of those in Iraq who've seen the most, and Syria, for the most despicable acts of cruelty inflicted upon their fellow man, and we need to stop this and we need to take action. I congratulate both sides of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any statements? I call the member for Chifley.
Madam Speaker,